Bees need two different kinds of food. One is honey made from nectar, which actually is a fluid that is collected in the heart of the flowers to encourage pollination by insects and other animals. The other comes from pollen, a fine powdery substance in yellow, consisting of microscopic grains stored from the male part of a flower or from a male cone. It contains a male gamete that can fertilize the female ovule, which is transported by wind, insects or other animals.
Part of the fun of experimenting with granular materials, says Stephen W. Morris, is the showmanship. In one stunt that he has demonstrated in settings ranging from high school classrooms to television studios, the University of Toronto physicist loads clear plastic tubes with white table salt and black sand and starts them rotating. What transpires in the tube usually knocks the socks off of any unsuspecting bystander. Instead of mixing into a drab grey sameness, the sand particles slowly separate into crisp black bands cutting across a long, narrow field of salt. As the spinning continues, some bands disappear and new ones arise. It's a parlor trick, Morris says. Not to deny its entertainment value, this demonstration of how strangely granular materials can behave is also an authentic experiment in a field both rich in fundamental physics and major practical consequences. Yet granular mixing today remains more of an art than a science, says chemical engineer Fernando J.
Over many centuries and across many territories, the Romans were able to win an astonishing number of military victories, and their success was due to several important factors. Italy was a peninsula not easily attacked, there was a huge pool of fighting men to draw upon, a disciplined and innovative army, a centralized command and line of supply, expert engineers, effective diplomacy through a network of allies, and an inclusive approach to conquered peoples which allowed for the strengthening and broadening of the Roman power and logistical basis. Further, her allies not only supplied, equipped and paid for additional men, but they also supplied vital materials such as grain and ships. On top of all, this Rome was more or less in a continuous state of war or readiness for it, and believed absolutely in the necessity of defending and imposing on others what she firmly believed was her cultural superiority.
The horned desert viper's ability to hunt at night has always puzzled biologists. Though it lies with its head buried in the sand, it can strike with great precision as soon as prey appears. Now, young physicists Leo van Hemmen and Paul Friedel at the Technical University of Munich in Germany have developed a model of the snake's auditory system to explain how the snake hears its prey without really having the ears for it. Although the vipers have internal ears that can hear frequencies between 200 and 1000 Hz, it is not the sound of the mouse scurrying about that they are detecting. The snakes don't have external eardrums, says Van Hemmen. So unless the mouse wears boots and starts stamping, the snake won't hear it.
With their punk hairstyles and bright colors, marmosets and tamarins are among the most attractive primates on Earth. These fast-moving, lightweight animals live in the rainforests of South America. Their small size makes it easy for them to dart about the trees, catching insects and small animals such as lizards, frogs, and snails. Marmosets have another unusual food source. They use their chisel-like incisor teeth to dig into tree bark and lap up the gummy sap that seeps out, leaving telltale, oval-shaped holes in the branches when they have finished. But as vast tracts of rainforests are cleared for plantations and cattle ranches, marmosets and tamarins are in serious danger of extinction.
Arguably the greatest mystery facing humanity today is the prospect that 75% of the universe is made up of a substance known as dark energy, about which we have almost no knowledge at all. Since a further 21% of the universe is made from invisible dark matter that can only be detected through its gravitational effects, the ordinary matter and energy making up the Earth, planets and stars is apparently only a tiny part of what exists. These discoveries require a shift in our perception as great as that made after Copernicus's revelation that the Earth moves around the Sun.
For all his fame and celebration, William Shakespeare remains a mysterious figure with regards to personal history. There are just two primary sources for information on the bard, his works, and various legal and church documents that have survived from Elizabethan times. Naturally, there are many gaps in this body of information, which tells us little about Shakespeare the man.
It is important to emphasize the need for hard work as an essential part of studying law, because far too many students are tempted to think that they can succeed by relying on what they imagine to be their natural ability, without bothering to add the expenditure of effort. To take an analogy, some people prefer the more or less instant gratification which comes from watching television adaptation of a classic novel to the rather more laborious process of reading the novel itself. Those who prefer watching television to reading a book are less likely to study law successfully, unless they rapidly acquire a taste for text-based materials.
The contemporary ministerial staffing system is large, active and partisan, far larger and further evolved than any Westminster equivalent. Ministers' demands for help to cope with the pressures of an increasingly competitive and professionalized political environment have been key drivers of the staffing system's development. But there has not been commensurate growth in arrangements to support and control it. The operating framework for ministerial staff is fragmented and ad hoc.
What is a country, and how is a country defined? When people ask how many countries there are in the world, they expect a simple answer. After all, we've explored the whole planet, we have international travel, satellite navigation and plenty of global organizations like the United Nations, so we should really know how many countries there are. However, the answer to the question varies according to whom you ask. Most people say there are 192 countries, but others point out that there could be more like 260 of them. So why isn't there a straightforward answer? The problem arises because there isn't a universally agreed definition of country and because, for political reasons, some countries find it convenient to recognize or not recognize other countries.
The most vital ingredient in Indian cooking, the basic element with which all dishes begin and, normally, the cheapest vegetable available, the pink onion is an essential item in the shopping basket of families of all classes. A popular saying holds that you will never starve because you can always afford a roti, a piece of simple, flat bread, and an onion. But in recent weeks, the onion has started to seem an unaffordable luxury for India's poor. Over the past few days, another sharp surge in prices has begun to unsettle the influential urban middle classes. The sudden spike in prices has been caused by large exports to neighboring countries and a shortage of supply. With its capacity for bringing down governments and scarring political careers, the onion plays an explosive role in Indian politics. This week reports of rising onion prices have made front-page news and absorbed the attention of the governing elite.
Sound depressing, even apocalyptic? Well, it could be the future. If government forecasts are right, about 20 years from now, 2 out of 5 households will be single occupancy. And there is evidence the situation is already deteriorating. According to a report, Social Isolation in America, published in the American Sociological Review in 2006, the average American today has only 2 close friends. 25% of those surveyed said they do not have anyone to talk with about important things, and yet, while some are declaring a crisis in our ability to make friends, others are saying exactly the opposite. For example, MSN's Anatomy of Friendship report, published last November, suggests that the average Briton has 54 friends, a spectacular rise of 64% since 2003.
Invasive species can decrease biodiversity and drive resident species to the brink of extinction. But how do these interlopers fare so well in unfamiliar territory? One idea is that they've escaped their enemies, for example, the parasites that keep them in check on their home turf. But a study in the journal Biology Letters suggests that notion doesn't always stand up. Because at least one kind of invasive shrimp is an even bigger pest when it has a parasite on board. The scientists were studying a freshwater shrimp commonly found in England. Fishermen brought the shrimp to Northern Ireland in the 1950s as a tasty treat for local trout. Well, the shrimp liked the new digs. So much that they've all but eliminated the native shrimp species. The strange thing is, they may have parasites to thank. In some streams, 70% of the invaders are infected with an intestinal worm that doesn't go for the native shrimp. But this gut worm doesn't slow them down. In fact, infected shrimp eat 30% more prey than those that are parasite-free. Which perhaps is not surprising. If you had a worm that constituted a quarter of your body weight, you'd eat more too.
How did the zebra get its stripes? One theory holds that stripes help confuse predators. But stripes might be primarily to protect zebras from ferocious insects. That's according to a study in the Journal of Experimental Biology. Horseflies are abundant in Africa. They deliver painful bites that spread disease and distract animals from grazing. The flies use polarized light hitting water as a guide to places to mate and lay eggs. And they read such light hitting dark mammal hides as a sign of a blood meal. Zebra embryos start out dark and develop their white stripes before birth. Could the stripes confuse flies? The researchers went to a farm infested with horseflies, where they set up models of black and white stripes of varying angles and widths, thus changing the direction of the reflected polarized light. They tracked how the patterns affected the fly's interest. They then tested models of horses colored black, brown, white or zebra striped, and, again tracked the effect on flies. Turns out that the black and white stripes on a zebra are optimal for avoiding a horsefly's attention, meaning that zebras may have evolved stripes to ward off disease-carrying insects, and to dine in peace.
Owls are nearly noiseless hunters, swooping down on prey without any warning whoosh. How do they do it? We've known that the leading edge of an owl's wing has a comb of stiff feathers, and the trailing edge has a flexible fringe, unlike the rigid trailing edge of a conventional bird wing. These two features contribute to a structure that produces almost no noise as it rushes through the air. Now it appears that these predators have a third trick up their sleeves, or rather, wings that allow them to be so silent but deadly. Researchers modeled the effect of the layer of down on the wing's top surface, and it looks like that fluffy stuff absorbs sound too. The work was presented at a meeting of the American Physical Society's Division of Fluid Dynamics. Mimicking owl wing down may lead to new soundproofing materials. Down and the other silencing features could inspire wind turbines and plane engines that produce less noise and fewer vibrations, so that all we hear is
"3 degrees does not sound like much, but it represents a rise in temperature compatible with the global heating that occurred between the last ice age, some 15,000 years ago, and the warmth of the 18th century. When Earth was cold, giant glaciers sometimes extended from the polar regions as far south as St. Louis in the US and the Alps in Europe. Later this century, when it is 3-degree hotter, glaciers everywhere will be melting in a climate of often unbearable heat and drought, punctuated with storms and floods. The consequences for humanity could be truly horrific. If we fail to act swiftly, the full impact of global heating could cull us along with vast populations of the plant and animals with whom we share Earth. In a worst-case scenario, there might, in the 22nd century, the only remnant of humanity eking out a diminished existence in the polar regions and the few remaining oases left on a hot and arid Earth.
Victoria University of Wellington has conferred an honorary degree on a distinguished astrophysicist in a recent graduation ceremony. Professor Warwick Couch received the honorary degree of Doctor of Science for his remarkable contribution to our knowledge of galaxies and dark energy. Professor Couch is a distinguished astrophysicist who has played a crucial role in the discovery that the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate, a finding which led to the lead scientists being awarded a Nobel Prize in Physics in 2011, which he attended in recognition of his contribution. In his research, Professor Couch uses large ground-based and space-based telescopes to observe galaxy clusters, which are the largest structures in the universe. He is also involved in a number of national and international committees overseeing the management of these telescopes. In addition to his own research activities, Professor Couch has worked to support young researchers and provide public comment on astronomy internationally.
Cultural studies and a new way of engaging in the study of culture. In the past, many academic subjects including anthropology, history, literary studies, human geography and sociology have brought their own disciplinary concerns to the study of culture. However, in recent decades there has been a renewed interest in the study of culture that has crossed disciplinary boundaries. The resulting activities, cultural studies, have emerged as an intriguing and exciting area of intellectual inquiry that has already shed important new life on the character of human cultures and which promises to continue so to do. While there is a little doubt that cultural studies are coming to be widely recognized as an important and distinctive field of study, it does seem to encompass a potentially enormous area. This is because the term culture has a complex history and range of usages, which have provided a legitimate focus of inquiry for several academic disciplines.
In reality, however, the causes of truancy and non-attendance are diverse and multifaceted. There are as many causes of non-attendance as there are non-attenders. Each child has her own unique story, and whilst there may often be certain identifiable factors in common, each non-attending child demands and deserves an individual response, tailored to meet their individual needs. This applies equally to the 14-year-old who fails to attend school because a parent is terminally ill, the overweight 11-year-old who fails to attend because he is embarrassed about changing for pay in front of peers, the 15-year-old who is bored by lessons, and the 7-year-old who is teased in the playground because she does not wear the latest designer label clothes.
Whether you want to exercise and stay healthy, train professionally with like-minded people, or indulge your competitive streak, Trinity Sport and Fitness has it covered. We've got a dedicated support development team on campus to support every student in taking part in sports. You might want to participate in sports competitions, volunteer with a local sports class, or simply play for fun with our social sport program. Trinity Fitness members of our public-facing sports facility will also entitle you to discounts when you are booking a sports facility and fitness class. You will also get an opportunity to benefit from tailored personal training, free activities, events, and lots more.
A mini helicopter modeled on flying tree seeds could soon be flying overhead. Evan Ulrich and colleagues at the University of Maryland in College Park turned to the biological world for inspiration to build a scaled-down helicopter that could mimic the properties of full-size aircraft. The complex design of full-size helicopters gets less efficient when shrunk, meaning that standard mini helicopters expend most of their power simply fighting to stay stable in the air. The researchers realized that a simpler aircraft designed to stay stable passively would use much less power and reduce manufacturing costs to boot. It turns out that nature had beaten them to it. The seeds of trees such as the maple have a single blade structure that allows them to fly far away and drift safely to the ground. These seeds, known as tamarins, need no engine to spin through the air, thanks to a process called auto-rotation. By analyzing the behavior of the tamarin with high-speed cameras, Ulrich and his team were able to copy its design.
As demand for food and competition for land rises, it is vital that crop losses are limited. Chemical protection has provided effective control of crop losses in recent years. Alongside chemical fertilizers and improved crop genetics, it has helped to increase crop yields dramatically over the last 6 decades. However, there is now a need to develop complementary alternatives, and researchers from the Rural Economy and Land Use Program have been exploring the potential of, and barriers to alternative pest management approaches. Alternatives to chemical pesticides are needed because overuse of them leads to pesticide resistance and affects biodiversity and water quality, says Dr. Alistair Bailey. Heightened EU regulations are also leading to the withdrawal of many pesticide products. Hence, complementary approaches are required to reduce use and preserve the efficacy of those valuable pesticides that are still available to sustain food production systems.
While workers worry about whether robots will take their jobs, teachers are wondering how to use education to insulate the next generation from such a fate. This has worked before. When the last wave of automation swept the developed world at the start of the 20th century, policymakers decided education was the answer. If machines were going to substitute for brawn, they reasoned, more people would need to use their brains. The U.S. invested heavily in education, with good results. Workers reap the benefits through better jobs and higher wages. Economists Andrew McAfee and Eric Brynjolfsson summed it up like this: the Industrial Revolution started a race between technology and education, and, for most of the 20th century, humans won that race.
At the end of the last ice age, the melting ice disrupted the ocean currents in the North Atlantic and caused a drop in temperature of almost 5 degrees. Even though the rest of the planet was warming up, the North Atlantic region remained in a cold period for 1,300 years. The same thing happened around 8,000 years ago, when the cooling lasted about 100 years, and it could happen again today. Even a short period of cooling in the North Atlantic could have a dramatic effect on the wildlife, and the human populations, living there.
People are generally living longer than previous generations across most parts of the world. Rising life expectancy is a result of advances in medicine as well as improving living standards and healthier lifestyles. But while this should be celebrated for social reasons, is it beneficial in economic terms? Does the increase in the older population create an economic burden on society, or can older people be mobilized to enhance the productivity of communities in which they work and live? New analysis of international data from 35 countries, published by the International Longevity Center, provides more evidence in favor of a longevity dividend. The authors found that as life expectancy increases, so does output per hour worked, per worker and per capita.